So let's say it's field day and you're asked to bring a rig to be used on field day, and you don't really want to, but you do it anyway, and everything's going well. Then the next thing you know, the rig gets pulled off the table and lands nose first onto the ground. What a nightmare. Well, this is something that's similar happened to one of our viewers that we'll call Frank. He had this rig, took the field day, and it took a nosedive. Would not fly. Went face first onto the ground. I guess he's cleaned it up and everything, but there is some damage. You know, this VFO encoder, we don't know what it's done to it. It feels okay, but you never know. And take a look at this mic connector. You can see the plastic is cracked a little bit around it, and the mic connector is sitting at an angle. So we don't know how bad that is until we get into it and tear it down and find out just what all's going on. So just in case, you know, we have the a new mic connector jack and ribbon cable, and we also have a new rotary encoder. Along with that, we've already got all the electrolytics except for the main filtering electrolytics. So we'll have to tear this FT-990 down. It's made by Yaesu, and see what all we can find that's been damaged or messed up and needs to be repaired. So I guess the first thing to do is get the covers off, probably get the faceplate off, and get in here and get a good look at the front of it. Alright, so I got all the covers off. I got the faceplate taped up so we don't do any more scratching or anything that's on there. So now we need to get all these knobs off and then remove the screws around, and we can get this faceplate completely off. And it looks like we have a lot of Allen head screws to remove, and this mic connector here, it's got to come off. So back in the old days, we would just grab a pair of needle nose pliers and go in here and catch those slots in the mic connectors and screw it off. But I made this tool, and Bill and I have been discussing over the email, Bill, this old 64 goat, about the tools to remove this kind of thing and those knurled nuts that go on that you really can't get nothing on. And he's found a couple of nice tools to do all that with, so I got to look those up and see if I can get some of them instead of doing it the old-fashioned way, them old knurled nuts. That's on a lot of vintage stuff, you know. What I normally do is tape up around it, then get a pair of vice grips on there and grab it and turn it, but then you end up scarring the nut up. This one is going to be pretty tight. Yep. So I removed the rubber trim ring around the VFO knob and put my Allen wrench in there to get to the set screw. And what I noticed is that the set screw is a bit stripped out. I don't know if that was due to impact or what, so probably gonna have to re-drill and tap put a little bit bigger set screw into this VFO knob. But you can see some scarring and damage on the shaft here. And it doesn't feel as free as it should, but we'll get that checked out and see. I'm ready to remove the screws from around the cover here. I never could get the mic jack out, so I'm thinking there's some issues going on there with that, and it's probably since everything is cocked over, that it's bent that front panel. So we'll get that off and see what's going on. Okay, so the way this thing is made to do, we remove 2 screws, the loosen 2 screws. The face plate will slide out and it'll come down just like a door, and that gives you access to all this. The thing only has a partial chassis in it. There's not a full metal chassis behind this, which means, you know, you got to take all this out and you got to move all this wiring. One of the getchers on this is that none of these connectors, the wire harnesses, are not numbered or not marked. Now the board locations are marked, as you can see. There you can see the writing down here under the connectors, but again, none of the harnesses are marked. So, you know, that makes it and there's a lot of these are multiple or the same size plug, so one will plug into another, and that can be real confusing real fast. So you have to go ahead and you have to mark these cables where they came from, so you can make sure you put them back the exact same way. I also wanted to show you some problems with the controls. This is the mic and the RF power gain control. You notice if I turn the mic gain, you can see the second part, which is the RF power, is also turning. I don't know if this was from impact or there's so much old grease inside this control. When you see the squelch and noise blanker works okay, and the AF RF, that one's okay. This is the processor and keyer. Yep, it's moving also. I think they're just heavily contaminated. You know, it might have some dirt gotten up in there when it fell, or, you know, just some old grease in here. So these will have to be washed out real good to get them things freed up like they're supposed to. As you can see, I'm working on getting all this apart. I did manage to go ahead and work my way down to getting the mic jack off. And yeah, it's a little damaged and cracked, and you can see that it's bent pretty bad. And this is the piece of metal that is formed that holds that mic jack, and you can see the bend in it. It doesn't look that bad, but yeah, it's pushed in pretty good right here, so we'll have to get that straightened out. Okay, I got this bracket all straightened out. It was warped pretty bad, and what I normally do is use hardwood, you know, and then use a body hammer to get everything back in shape, and then also put it in a vise and clamp it. But it's good and flat now, so our new mic connector should sit flat into the faceplate of the radio. So I'm going to go ahead and get this back installed. It's a little bit of a pain to do. You got this dual jack board here that it goes into, and it sits in here like this. Then it's held on by a couple of little keepers that just slide in. I'm going to get this here back reinstalled, get the mic connector in. Then we got to look at the rotary encoder down here and get it changed out. Alright, to get this rotary encoder out, you just simply take a deep socket, put it on here and loosen up the nut. And it'll screw right off. Be careful because there is a plastic washer and a spring that goes in behind this. We lay the front panel down. You can see the rotary encoder, and it just pulls right up. There's a washer behind it on this side, so don't lose that, because I don't think the new one comes with it. Then we just followed the wires around and unplug it from the board, and we can install our new one. So here we see the old encoder on the right side and the new encoder on the left side, and you see it's, you know, shaped quite a bit different than what the old one is. And you will find that the shaft is cut, so our set screws will have to be a little longer than what the original set screw would be, which we have to drill that out and retap it anyway. So we just put a longer one in so it'll make good contact. So we just put this in and just route the cables back out and up and around and under and plug back into the board. Now if you remember, looking, the old encoder was round on the back, so it fit in here with no problem. Didn't matter which way you had the wiring turned. The new encoder, it's not going to be like that. It's going to have to fit in there a certain way, so it'll go into this slot that's cut out in the PCB board. So when you put this in, you got to make sure you orientate this the correct way. Alright, so I want to address these controls that are not working correctly. And these controls are sealed on the back of them, so you really cannot get inside to clean the actual switches itself. But if you notice, when I turn this one, you see the back control is turning. You know, I showed this before. What we're going to try to do is take some of this Deoxit DL100 and put it down and let that work. Now if you want to spray these out, you can take an old rag, or in this case an old t-shirt, and lay up here like so. Now you can get in there and spray this out without getting chemicals all over the front of the radio. And just take this and work it around. I'll go ahead and remove this because I'm not going to use no spray on it. That's just to show if you're going to use a spray type cleaner. And it looks like that one's cleaned up and it's no longer turning. I'm just going to go ahead and do all of them. You ain't got to go all the way around it, it will get in there. And like I say, you just use just a little bit. A couple of controls over here on the right side of the radio, I'll go ahead and hit them too. Just put that in and give them a good working. And I want you to remember that, you know, the inner shaft is aluminum or aluminium for my overseas friends, and this bottom piece is a brass type material. And that seems to have worked in there pretty good. So one control should not affect the other. As you can see, there was a couple more over here on this side. So yeah, that should take care of that. So when you turn one control, it doesn't turn the other. Same thing on the outer ring. Alrighty. Well, I got the VFO knob installed, and all I did was took a reamer and reamed this out. Got a little bit bigger set screw that was a little longer, and the hex head and the set screw is actually the same size as the original. So if anybody goes to work on this and they stick their favorite Allen key in there, they won't find that it's a different size. And our VFO turns nice and smooth now. We're going to get all the knobs back on the front, and then we need to look at a few other issues that this radio is having. So I'm putting the back knobs on, and when you go to set these on, if you just stick them up there, you know they'll go all the way to the front panel, and then they turn, they'll scratch the front panel. I just use a thin piece of cardstock material that's cut out, and we just simply set the knob on there. This gets all the knobs sitting at the same height without rubbing the front panel. I got the regulator board pulled out. Now if you are tearing these radios down, if you're going to recap anything in this radio, make sure it's this regulator board. There's a little bit of heat built up in here, so you know these capacitors will dry out pretty quickly. So yes, make sure that they're replaced. And I'm going to warn you again, your circuit board is labeled like fan, PS, PA. You know, all the connectors are labeled, but none of these connectors and wire harnesses, you can see all these red and black wires here just floating around, none of them are labeled. So when you disconnect these, make sure you're putting some tape on them, and that way you know where they go back at. Even taking pictures might not help in this, so make sure you're labeling wires correctly. So I'm sitting here recapping this regulator board. Two things I want to let you know. Under this can, which I've done replaced them, is 330 microfarad capacitors, and all of these are positive ground. So when you're replacing these, make sure you put them back the same way they came out. Positive goes to ground. There's two back here and one over here. And like I say, all the positive leads will go to ground. Also, I'm looking here, and I've noticed this regulator transistor is a bit loose. You can see it move right there. And the solder connections are broken on the circuit trace. So, you know, keep your eyes on that when you're doing this kind of stuff, because this soldering in these radios are not the greatest at times. So you need to reflow those connections. Now I'm actually going to desolder this and then resolder it back. And we got the recap done. Just sitting here now, tightening the wires back up, tie wrapping them back in place, putting some tape up here on the front to keep this wire from pinching under the front cover when it's put back together. Now what I need to do is get the bench cleaned off, because there's stuff everywhere at the moment, and then we can start testing this radio out and see just exactly where it's at and what needs to be done. Okay, the rig is all back together, and I've checked out the receiver, the transmitter, everything's looking real good. AGC's working great. Good sensitivity on the receiver. The only problem I am seeing, okay, I'm on AM mode, I got it set to 7.200, and if we look over at the IFR, I am on the 1 kilohertz scale. And let me reposition this camera a little bit. Okay, now you can see the frequency error. I have the IFR dialed in at 7.200 also, and when we hit the send button, you can see we are about 200 hertz off on transmit frequency. I'll set it to 14 megahertz at 14.200 exactly. Now the owner did tell me that he has noticed it was about 200 hertz off using a radio to check it with, so he was pretty spot on with that. Okay, and now we're on 14.200. We'll hit the key. Okay, I had to switch it AM. When you went to change bands, it already goes to the mode of operation that is normally used. So I had to go hit the AM button. And we can see that band is 2 off. Okay, 28.3 megahertz, and we'll hit the send, and you can see it's about 800 hertz off, almost a whole kilohertz. So I know you're saying, what a big deal, go ahead and align the radio. Not as easy as it looks. If you noticed, this radio has all the modules are plugged in sitting vertically, and to get these out you just remove 2 screws, undo the cabling, and you can slide the board out. So you need extender cords to do the adjustments. Now, you know, you could say, well, slide the board up, you know, tweak the adjustment, put it back in, turn it on, see where you're at. That's a bit aggravating, because you do need to measure the voltages. Like on the local board over here, you have to set the voltages for each band about 8 volts, and that would be a little tough to do. So there's 2 main steps in aligning this Yaesu FT-990 to get it so that it is transmitting directly on frequency. And one of the first things is this reference frequency here. And to adjust that, you connect the frequency counter to pin 1 of J4003. Adjust the TCXO-2 trimmer if installed, or TC4001 for a 10.48576 megahertz plus or minus 5 hertz. So that's what we'll go ahead and do in this next step. Okay, I wanted to start the alignment on this radio. However, we do not have the proper extender cards for this, so it's going to be kind of tough to do, but this is how I will do it. I wanted to set the reference frequency, or check the reference frequency, and it's on it's going to be TC 4001, which is on the very bottom of the board. And what I've done was move the local oscillator board, soldered the wire to it, run it up here in the back and taped it in place, and I have my frequency counter connected to it. And it should be 10.48576 megahertz. And if we look at the frequency counter, we can see we're at 10.48547. So we are very, very close on frequency with the local reference. Now I probably can tweak this up a little bit. What I'll need to do is pull the, shut the radio down, pull the board up, tweak it a little bit, put it back in, turn it on, let it warm up and try it. I'm not going to bore y'all with doing that, but we'll go ahead and see, can I get it adjusted. Alright, you can now see the frequency is at 10.4857273, and it should be 76. I mean, that's close enough, you ain't got to really worry about it. But I'll just show you what I'm having to go through just to do that. First thing we do is turn the unit off. I'll disconnect my probe. We have to disconnect this cable in the front. Pop each corner of the board up. Lift it up. This is J4003 on this connector right here. As you can see, I have the wire soldered to it and coming up the back side. This is TC4001 right here. I'll zoom in on that a little bit so you can see it. And you can see it is one of those plastic trimmers. Now the best thing to do is go ahead and order a TXEO and put in here, and then that will make things a lot better for as frequency drift. But I'm going to just hit this trimmer ever so slightly. I'm going to have to put some light on it to see what I'm doing. Well, it doesn't take much tuning on it to get it off. Then we line the board back up. Push all the way down. Click it in. Connect my coax. Hook our frequency counter back up, and then repower the radio. And you see we're hitting 7374. That's close enough for anything. I'm not going to try to get it right on 76. I mean, that's fine. That last digit won't really make a whole lot of issues down the line. But that's what you have to go through to do this if you don't have the proper extender cards. Okay, in this next step, we got to adjust the PLL VCV. That's very actor control voltage. You put the unit in single sideband and you connect the DC voltmeter to TP4001. We'll tune the display for each of the frequencies listed below, and we'll adjust T4001 through T4005 for each frequency. And what we want to do is that we adjust for 8 volts, and that has a tolerance of plus or minus 0.1 volt. So we'll do that step next. I got the receiver set to 3.999, and you can see we're at 8.17 volts. There should be 8 volts plus or minus 0.1 volt. So you can see that band is off by just a little bit. And again, the way that I had to do this was go in and add a wire. You can see right here down to TP 4001 on the front. So I'm going through all the bands and see what they are. So the next band will be 7.499. So that's 7.499, and you can see it's 8.36. So again, that VCO is off a little bit. At 14.499, VCO3 is at 8.14. Looking at VCO number 4 for 15 meters, which is 21.499, we're at 8.13. And VCO number 5, which is 29.999, is 8.43. So they're all off a bit. So I need to go in and reset every one of those and get them dead on, and we'll have to do it the same way that I was doing before. I'll have to lift the board, tweak the adjustment, put it back in, and test it. It's the honest way to do it, guys, when you don't have the extender cord. Okay, guys, went through all that. Man, that was a lot of work to get every one of those adjustments on for each band, and it took about close to an hour and a half. But you can see we're on 14.200. Okay, 14.200, and we have a look at the frequency error on the IFR. So we're about to glare at the transmit, and we're within 10 hertz of being directly on frequency, which is not going to matter. You might be able to tell a little difference on CW, but on signal sideband you will tell no difference. And that's the process you have to go through to get all that adjustment. So just so you guys can see, our test point is located right down here, right down there, and you can see this piece of wire that I have soldered to it that's coming up. And these are your VCOs 1 through 5 for all the bands that has to be adjusted. And you can see when that board is in there, there's just no way to get to them without having a extender cord. Now these things has got a lot of different type of plugs than the older Yaesus, as you can see here. So yeah, finding these connectors, male and female, will be kind of tough.
Get your amateur license without even taking a code test. For some time, and I think what you're using down there, I forgot now. You're using a hex beam down there, but anyway, I didn't put the particulars down. It's good to hear you again, buddy. Is the weather still hot up there? We got a little reprieve. We had some rain yesterday and a little last night, I think.
Listen to a little 20 meters. The bands are like always not in that great a shape. But radio sounds good. Now the radio looks good. I have the Yaesu FT-990 all back together, and I got to do a little dusting and cleaning before I put it back in the box and send it out. But she seems to be working a treat now. Seems to be in real good shape. You know, be careful taking your radios out to field day and letting other people use them, especially if the radio has some sentimental value to you. You know, just be careful. These things do happen, get knocked off the table and hit the ground. I had a Tech 2510, and what that is a 2 meter transverter that works on a 10 megahertz IF. It was connected to a Kenwood TS520, and it converted the frequency over to use on the Oscar satellites. Well, it got knocked off the table and dented the cabinet. Lucky there was nothing else happened to it, but I was able to fix that pretty easy. So yeah, be careful when you take your rigs out to use at field day. Do have a little bit minor cosmetic issue over here by the mic jack. I've tried to polish this the best I could, but you know, it just isn't going to come out when you get that plastic scarred up like that. But you know, it's back in good mechanical order and electrical order, so Frank should have a blast for this. Got it back on frequency like it's supposed to be. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the little repair. I know it wasn't a you know, a lot of troubleshooting or anything, because we knew exactly what had to be done. So went ahead and did it, and again, without extender cords, she's a little tough to work on. But you know, we eventually got it. Got many hours tied up in that, getting everything aligned. Like I say, you pull the board out, you make a tweak, you put it back in, you check. Takes quite a while doing it that way. Anyway, hope you enjoyed it. If you do, give me a big old thumbs up down there, and I'd like to hear your comments from down below, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye now.